I am Joshua Bardwell, and I have some very special guests with me today. Today, I have Dave Messina and Josh Cook of the FPV Freedom Coalition. And this is a big one because there's a new thing on the horizon called Remote ID. And if you've heard about it, then you're probably pissed off. And if you haven't heard about it, then you're going to be pissed off. But we got to let people know, who are you guys and why are you qualified to talk about this? So, who are you guys and why are you qualified to talk about this?
It's a good question. Joshua, I'm the president and CEO of FPVFC. I've got 4 decades of business experience. I'm a mechanical engineer. I've got 4.5 decades of flying model airplanes. I've been flying FPV for 3 years. We build and fly them as well. We've been working with the FAA for over a year with the Drone Advisory Committee. So I think we're establishing our credentials and establishing a reputation with the FAA that we're a trusted party that is seeking to represent the FPV community.
Okay.
Josh?
Yep. Josh?
My name is Josh Cook. I'm the vice president of the FPVFC. Beyond that, even beyond that, I've been an FPV pilot for the last 4 years and have really worked to understand the hobby, have really worked to understand people's position in the hobby, as well as the regulations. And when anything comes out, I'm neck deep in it, trying to wade through the mud and trying to make sense of it for everybody. Mm-hmm. And really for me, it's just being able to continue to do what I've done over the past 4 years. I've been lucky. I work with on a contract basis with Get FPV and their /learn page. I write a ton of articles, reviews and how-tos and whatnot. And through that experience, I've gained a huge technical understanding of what these aircraft are capable of, and a huge enjoyment of the hobby. So, long and short of it, I'm an FPV pilot who wants to see us continue what we're doing.
And you guys, the FPV Freedom Coalition how would you describe the FPV Freedom Coalition? Is it a lobbying? I think lobbying is maybe not quite the right word.
Yeah, and Josh can chime in on this as well. We exist to advocate to the FAA on behalf of FPV flyers in the United States and to provide education to the FPV community.
Our ultimate goal here, Joshua, is basically just to foster the freedom that is FPV flight. And, even more so than that, just be able to, for everybody that enjoys this, to be able to do what they do. And, we don't claim to speak for anybody in particular. We just want to continue doing what we all want to do. And that's the long and short of it.
So, okay, let's talk about remote ID. The FAA thinks that there is a problem, which is that there are aircraft drones in the air and they don't know who is operating them. And I see where they're coming from. Like, people talk about how paragliders are much less regulated than drones. For example, you don't need like but when a paraglider goes down, the pilot goes down with it. So everybody is kind of motivated in the same direction. But with drones, you can't exactly fly an F-16 up next to a drone and make him land and arrest the pilot because he's not there. So I see where they're coming from with remote ID. But the way they're approaching it is really screwy. Where do we even start picking this apart? And I want to, where do we start picking this apart? What kind of things are in this proposed rule, that will jump out and we'll be like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
Honestly, the first thing that would jump out to anybody is the 3 different types of remote ID: the standard, the limited, and the non-equipped. And for all of us in the FPV community, in the model aircraft community, and in general, we're all going to fall under UAS without remote identification. And right then and there is the kind of the crux of the matter, in which we will be forced to fly within FAA approved flying sites, or FRIAs, or FAA recognized identification area. Let me get my title right there. And those are going to be areas that the FAA is going to deem as capable of supporting UAS without remote identification. And 9 times out of 10, that's probably going to be a fixed flying site, or it will be a fixed flying site, but it's probably going to be an AMA field. And we as FPV pilots, we don't fly flat fields. I mean, I live right next to a farm field that I can fly at any time I want, but it's boring. You know, it's absolutely 100% boring. There's no obstacles. There's no proximity. There's no, you know, things to do tricks around or anything like that. And not to mention the fact that, you know, pardon the pun, but you're going to have to dodge the old guys that are flying their fixed wings. And nobody wants to do that.
So the FAA's approach is that if you can't remote ID, if you can't report where you are and who is flying, and that's what remote ID boils down to. They want to know for every drone that's in the air what its real time, what its location is, and who the operator is. And they want to create this database that if you are a police officer or an FAA person and you see a drone in the air, you pull out your smartphone app, you log into this system that they're going to create, and you say at GPS coordinates X who is flying, and you get that person's. That's what they want. And if you can't do that,
the aircraft lat lawn as well as the control station lat lawn. So, which is,
and if you can't do that, which we'll talk. So people might say, well, okay, why can't we do that? Hold on. But if you can't do that, then you got to fly at a pre-approved flight location, right? So a FRIA is what they're calling them. So we already don't like that because we fly at parks. We fly all over the place. We fly anywhere we think is safe. So this is the first place where we butt up against this. Oh, but it gets better, doesn't it?
It does.
So let's say that we say, okay, every single AMA field in existence is a FRIA now. Okay, guys, calm down. Go fly at the pre-approved locations. What's your problem? What's the problem? Go ahead.
There's a 12-month period where you can sign in to be a FRIA, and once that 12-month period is expired, there will be no further applications accepted. So there's an anticipation that this is going to end a life, or this will decay over time.
Right. Because eventually your flight field shuts down, you lose access to it, they turn it into a shopping mall, and since there can never be any more, 12 months after this law goes into effect, there cannot be any more applications ever for new flight locations. Eventually there will, in other words, this is they're just trying to kill off non-remote ID flight. And they're saying, oh, don't worry, you can still fly at AMA or FRIAs, but eventually there won't be any more FRIAs.
Yep. The expectation is that over the next several years, these FRIAs will, you know, be lost due to, and eventually it will be negated by the fact that they're saying there will be no more UAS without remote ID, which, you know, kind of kills off the.
And well, and a good segue to that one is the next big one after the three areas that Josh mentioned, the standard, limited, and non-equipped, is amateur built restrictions.
Okay, let's talk about, and this, Dave, I think this gets to the question of, okay, I don't like the government having my info, but I'm a law-abiding citizen. I will build my drone, and I will put this special transponder on it. Transponder on it. And it's a Friends reference for anyone who knows Friends. I'll put this special transponder on it, and I will comply with the law. So, Dave, why is that person not going to be able to actually do that?
Well, the only way, if you build your own UAS or your own drone and add in the transponder, you by definition that becomes a FRIA only device. And because you have to have 100% of the components. If you want to build a kit, you have to obtain 100% of the components from an FAA approved producer. And so that it has to be all of the bits that we know to put together a quad.
Right. Because the FAA doesn't want you to say, oh, yeah, I've got my transponder, don't worry. But then you put a Betaflight flight controller on it, it's open source, and you can just make it do whatever you want. So you can build your own quad as long as every single piece of it has come from an FAA-approved manufacturer. You can put it together. It's like IKEA furniture. You can't build your own. What would Nick Offerman say about this? So any quad that has any part that is not part of a pre-approved kit, back to the FRIA fields.
Right.
Okay.
And And if you built it to comply with the limited remote ID, which electronically has a geofencing of 400 foot dome, you go to a FRIA, you figure, oh great, I can at least fly freely here. Well, that
Yeah.
device now is restricted to fly in a 400-foot dome inside a FRIA because of its electronics.
Yeah. So I've been thinking, how will this play out? What's the best case scenario for how this plays out if this goes through? And the best case scenario is that someone like DJI gets on that approved FAA list and they sell you, here is your FPV racing drone. It's like a DJI, what was the DJI racing drone? I don't know.
Oh,
And
the
it's
Spark.
the Spark. They
Yeah.
sell you one and they, okay, you want to build it yourself, you want us to build it for you. And now you've got limited remote ID. And limited remote ID, the way that you don't have to have, in fact, you're not allowed to have like a transponder on the drone. So then how do you like tell the FAA where you are at all times in real time?
With Wi-Fi that has to be communicating from the aircraft as well as the control station.
Okay. So the
So
aircraft.
hang on. Let
Yeah.
me correct something real quick.
Okay.
On limited remote ID, you have to be able to broadcast from your ground station, not from the UAS.
Right.
So you would be basically transmitting your personal location, and that whole 400-foot radius dome would be the area that your drone or your UAS could fly in. They do not want, for limited remote ID, UAS to be broadcasting their location because it would not be a part of that spec for
Right.
that class. So that's why, because you're only transmitting your ground station, that's why they're limiting you to a 400-foot radius dome.
And so the kicker here is if you try to comply with this law and you fall under limited remote ID, you can fly anywhere. You don't have to be at one of these FRIA fields, but you cannot fly more than 400 feet from your location. And I think they say something in there like they want a police officer who sees the drone to be able to look around and find the pilot. And they figure that if you're within 400 feet of yourself, then they'll be able to do that. So they basically just pulled this number out of their ass. I personally know I've flown with it, in the desert in Hesperia. I flew 1.5 kilometers and I could still see my drone up on the hillside. 400 feet it's not that much depending on where you're flying.
Well, no, and honestly, I think they came up with a 400-foot radius because of the altitude.
Because of the altitude. They were just like,
exactly.
Yeah,
So
400
just like,
feet, it works.
Yeah, it
right?
sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So, but most of us who are out freestyling, I'm primarily a freestyle pilot. I don't race, but I do high speed freestyle. So
Yeah.
a lot of my drones over here are going to be 80, 90 mile an hour plus drones, and I can eat up 400 feet or 800 feet in seconds.
Yeah.
So
now what's to stop you? Let me ask you this. Because I haven't been able to figure this out from reading it. If you buy one of these kits or pre-built drones that complies with limited remote ID, is it up to you to stay within 400 feet, or does it self-enforce that limit? Dave, you're nodding.
It self-enforces, and it's supposed to be on a different set of frequencies from the standard. So you can't alter it and make it cheat into a standard capability.
So this idea that, okay, I'm going to buy it and then I'm going to fly 600 feet away, but who's going to know? Nope.
Right. It'll shut
All
down,
right.
or it just won't go.
Let's talk then about full remote ID. And I almost feel like there's no point to this because hobbyists aren't going to do full remote ID, right? Am I wrong about that? Professionals might, commercial grade, and certainly the guys like the Amazons and the UPSs and the FedExes of the world. But like, not us, right?
I think the people that you're going to see primarily doing full remote ID are going to be the delivery companies. You're going to see perhaps people in the movie industry, maybe agricultural drones and aircraft. Those are going to be the kind of people, the professional, the consummate professionals that are making a living out of doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the hobbyist because I think the bar is set too high, and I think they're opening up a lot of stuff to be BVLOS capable or beyond visual line of sight, but it's not a mark that the hobbyist is going to be able to step into without a significant amount of money, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
because
This is a step function in cost because they talk about detect and avoid at 2 to 3 miles. So instead of a couple hundred feet of radius that you want to be able to have that transponder capable, it's now a couple of miles, and you've now gone into a significantly higher power output, and hence the cost.
And this segues us into another sort of phase of the discussion, because the full remote ID capable is actually super exciting if you are a professional who can meet these requirements. Because right now, if you want to do a beyond visual line of sight, in other words, if you want to fly anywhere where a spotter doesn't have eyes on it, wink, wink, which we all never do, but as a pro, you got to follow the rules. You have to file for a waiver, and that can take 30 to 90 days. And it basically means that as a pro, you can't legally do BVLOS because by the time you got the waiver, the client has hired someone else.
Right.
And now,
there've only been 50 waivers on BVLOS, so it is a very, very, very tall and restrictive capability, to do it legally, like with ground stations and ground radar and multiple spotters.
Chase planes and.
Yeah, this is basically hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars.
So now, as a professional, you can invest only, let's say, thousands of dollars, and you can fly beyond visual line of sight as much as you want. Super, super exciting. And the idea that this new remote ID is super exciting for professionals and completely screws over hobbyists, I wonder how that happened. That's just got to be a coincidence, right? No, because it reflects the voices that are at the table, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely, it does. And, that's the hard part here is that when you look at the DAC or the ARC or any
What's the DAC and the ARC for those who don't know?
So you had the DAC is the Drone Advisory Council, and the ARC is the Advanced Rulemaking Committee.
And these are FAA like subcommittees, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Josh.
So when you look at the members of the DAC, for example, a lot of the companies represented, and I will say companies, are going to be those that have a vested interest in BVLOS for things like deliveries and for medical reasons and for agriculture, and the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of these companies are developing very specific technology to step into this world that the FAA is creating through these regulations. What you don't see, and tragically, is a large representation for the recreational pilots. And you've got the AMA that does have a seat at the table. Dave has been awesome and has gone down there and been an observer and participated in the individual task groups that come out of the DAC. But that you're looking at it, that's it.
Yeah.
There's the one other organization that's that supports operators at the DAC is BNSF, so Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. And so why are they there? Because they're inspecting their lines, so a legitimate use, but again, I'd consider that very heavily commercial, even though they are operators.
So the voices at the table are all people who want to kick us out of the airspace so they can make their jobs easier and make their profits taller. The exception to that is the AMA, who we're going to get to in just a second. But I want to point out that FPV Freedom Coalition, that when this first came out, I saw a few people who had some angry comments that the FPV Freedom Coalition, this is their grand master plan, and we have to address that. So the FPV Freedom Coalition was originally founded. Two of the founders, I think Chad Capper was a founder, and Jeff Thompson, the CEO of Red Cat, is a founder. Was he a founder?
No.
Was he a board member?
He's a board member.
Let me get the facts right. Is he still a board member?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And I want to just cut straight to the heart of that, because number one, if you want to know what FPV Freedom Coalition is doing, you can just go to their webpage and see what their stance is. But number two, Dave, you have traveled on your own dime to attend these meetings, and you have done as much as any private citizen could ever be asked to do to try to advocate. But at the end of the day, FPVFC is not like a voting member on these committees, like the AMA is, like all these other. You go, and if you had some nefarious master plan, it kind of doesn't matter because no one's really listening. I mean, I don't want to minimize what you've done. I feel like you have pigeonholed some people and gotten some words in edgewise, but
we a good so and in fact, when you look at the DAC as in and of itself, we were able to get changes into the remote ID submission into the DAC that went to the FAA. That was also not, they didn't acknowledge that or incorporate that into the NPRM. So we've met, it's got to be close to 100 different people in aviation industry, as well as associations, who are sympathetic to our cause and who are helping us understand how we can better work with the FAA. And the DAC is just one piece of it. So, but yeah, I'm with you from the overall point.
Yeah. So let's talk about the AMA. And I don't want to put you guys in an awkward spot because I understand that as professionals, I don't know. But I've always tried to give the AMA as much of the benefit of the doubt as I can. That when FPV first started blowing up, it felt like the AMA just threw us under the bus. Then it felt like they went, oh, crap, our membership is going down. I guess these FPV guys, and they tried to kind of get us under the umbrella. But after looking at their response to this new proposed rulemaking, they basically said, well, don't worry, we protected our flight fields, except they didn't even do that because the flight fields are going away.
Well, here's two things to that coin here is that one, the FAA hasn't defined what a CBO is. So technically, the AMA is not a CBO. There are no CBOs because they haven't formulated a definition of it. The AMA is assuming they're going to be a CBO, and congrats on them. They'd probably be the first bet to be one.
Yeah.
But there's no definition yet. The second part is that the AMA has not truly spoken up for the FPV pilot.
Exactly.
And, they say they have, and they say they love us and they want us there, but there's too many stories of people going to flight fields and being rejected and kicked out and not able to fly, or any number of the above, and not to mention you've got a $75 fee to become an AMA member. Most clubs require a additional fee at the club. So I mean, if you just start talking about the entrance to the hobby, and we're talking about, let's take remote ID, combine it with AMA, you're talking a subscription to a USS service, a remote ID USS service. Those are the people that are going to be taking the information that you're broadcasting.
Oh yeah, by the way, we didn't mention that. In order to do that remote ID, you have to pay for the subscription service. Yep. You have to pay so that the government can monitor you.
Let's talk about your data plan that you're using to transmit that stuff. Let's talk about the AMA and their fees. I mean, it's just the barrier just keeps going up and up and up and up and up.
So as we look at the AMA, to just reinforce what Josh is saying, is that at their executive levels, they really want to embrace and try to sweep in the many members or many people who are flying drones around the country. They have a stated number of 200,000 members. About 50,000 of those are junior, so they're unpaid, and they're providing secondary insurance as part of that $75. What they're just, and so I'm an AMA member. I'm an AMA officer of a local chapter, and the reception at most club events is lukewarm at best if you arrive with an FPV. And so I have spoken to Rich Hansen, the president. I've spoken to Tyler Dobbs, the director of governmental affairs, and I've spoken to my own district VP in the AMA. So we have an agreement to try to work together, but they've been pretty standoffish and not really embracing what we're trying to do with the FPV. So
and I also am an AMA member. And I feel like, even if you don't feel like politically they're doing the right thing, the insurance is well worth having, and it's required to get into a lot of events and races. But But at no, and this really came to a head when I saw their response to the Remote ID NPRM. At no point do I feel like they are going out on a limb to advocate for FPV. They didn't say, we are outraged that you can't fly at parks under this. They said, don't worry, you'll still be able to fly at AMA fields. And I thought, I don't fly at AMA fields. Never mind the fact that many AMA fields are actively hostile. Maybe that's not the organization's fault. Where is the sticking up for FPV pilots? And I think, and I have heard that is also reflected when they have a seat at the table at the rulemaking committees, that they have no interest in really sticking up for FPV. They just want to protect their flight fields and protect their fixed wing flyers, flying ovals, and they don't really care about that. You can say what you want in response to that.
Yeah, this is an aspect of, when you come to the table, I've worked now on 3 task forces or tasking groups. And when you come forward with an attitude of whatever needs to be done, I'll help get it done. If it helps RC models, if it helps commercial, if it helps industry, large, like Predator level class of drones, I'm in to help. And if you come with that attitude, then you get a real good response from, we've gotten responses from ALPA, AOPA. I mean, these Airline Pilots Association is helping us out. AOPA, Aircraft and Owners Pilots Association. These people, they've been doing and working with the FAA for decades, and they're supportive because you come to the table and want to help. And that's what we've been trying to do.
Okay, well, we'll keep a positive spin in there, but I've said my piece. What can we do right now to help? Because this law is not passed yet. It is in a comment period of 60 days starting on January 1st, 2020, right? And right now,
December 31st.
December 31st. So we have until when?
March
2nd. March 2nd. And there's a web page. There's a link in the video description where people can file a comment, which I am sure will be completely ignored by the FAA. Sorry, but you should do it anyway.
You should.
And because just writing F you FAA, they're just going to throw that in the bin. So how can people make the most possible impact with their comments?
The first and best thing that you can do is to check out our layman's guide to remote ID. If you have the time, read the actual document, the 319 page document, and let me tell you, it's a page turner.
Mm-hmm.
But give that a read and start breaking down the areas where you feel that they're overreaching, and there's a lot of them. Second, there are a lot of places in there where they are asking for comments on specific items. So, for example, the period of time in which they accept FRIA sites, or the use of serial numbers to identify individual drones. Those things they're all requesting specific information on. But even more so, tell them your story. Tell them the story of the people that fly in your area. Let them know how much innovation that the hobbyist community has contributed to not only manned aviation, but to commercial drone use. It all gets developed here, guys. And if we're not flying, then we're not innovating. And if we're not innovating, then everybody suffers.
I would love to see you guys put out, and I know that form letters are bad, that when they get 5,000 copies of the same letter, they throw them out. So you should write your own letter in your own words. I would love to see you guys put out talking points, though, specific things that people could notice or think about.
Right, and to that end, what we're doing is we're assembling the top 5 or so items that we figure are, here are the areas that require response. So we went through most of them. And then we're going to put our recommended response, and then we're going to solicit comments on those. And so those will absolutely be talking points. In addition, as would also recommend emails to congressional representatives, U.S. congressional representatives, as well as senators, as well as the chairs to the aviation subcommittees in the House and the Senate who own the funding of the FAA. We will create sample letters. And in those instances, copy and paste has merit because they'll do a count on who all cares. In addition, we're working to join forces with anyone and everyone we can associations, press, retail, manufacturers, whomever, so that we're working on this together. And we don't own a patent on ideas. We're welcome to work and share with what we've got.
So here's what I would say I think people should do, and you guys tell me if you add or subtract any of it. Don't go leave a comment right this minute.
No.
Wait. Get your head straight. Wait for the FPV Freedom Coalition to put out these talking points, the suggested plan of action. We have until March 2nd. There is no benefit to getting in early, but there is a cost to going off half-cocked. FPV Freedom Coalition is fpvfc.org. These guys would love to get your membership. Love to get, like I say, Dave, I heard you paid out of pocket to fly to Washington and attend some meetings. It's very fortunate that you're in a position to do that, but obviously you shouldn't have to. And then as the March 2nd deadline approaches and we get all our ducks in a row, don't let this slide. And I haven't come... There's other channels. If you watch RC Model Reviews, seems like every 6 months he has a The Sky is Falling video. And I'm not saying he's wrong, but I haven't jumped. I've been like, well, maybe it's not the... And now I'm like, okay, seriously, get off your ass, comment. This is it. So,
yeah,
you guys, anything?
I was hoping that this remote ID NPRM would be much more blasé, that it would be, okay, yeah, we can get along with it. And that would have created less of a response. And so the fact that, I agree, this is really, really bad.
Because what you told me, Dave, I did an interview with Dave 6 months or a year, I'm not sure, and you said that you thought remote ID was going to work like this. You get on your phone, you say, I'm flying in this location, and I'm going to define like a cone, 400 feet by 1,000 feet. Okay, it's approved. And I was like, that's not so bad. I would do that.
Yeah.
Right. And that was part of the submission that we made as the DAC going into the FAA, so the Drone Advisory Committee. And that's embodied in the ASTM work group that we will be going through in detail as part of our observations. I'd also add, in addition, we'll also be asking folks to think about and bringing up the data assumptions, because there are a bunch that we feel are not accurate. And if we
about like the number of
data, we can attack those. That's a good argument.
Yeah, because they make some assumptions about like the number of homemade drones and other assumptions that you read it and you go, that's wrong.
Right.
And
like
if no one says that's wrong and challenges them, then they'll just
93% of the current drone fleet could be firmware upgraded to be compliant. I don't think so.
No,
I don't think so.
Definitely not. You guys, that's it. FPVFC.org. Links to this stuff in the video description. A month from now, keep up with the website. A month from now, when we figure out what the response should be, let's just flood them with stuff. In the meantime, let's keep flying. The proposed rulemaking is 60 days, and then if it were to go into effect, it would be another 3 years as it rolls out. So, the world isn't... People are like, I'm just selling all my gear. It's not time to sell all your gear yet. But definitely, this time is now to act.
Yes.
Thank you guys for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for reading the 300 freaking page document and boiling it down into 6 pages so people like me don't have to do it. And thanks for everything else you're doing.
Thank you.
Of course. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Happy flying, everybody. Boy, that's bittersweet. It's my usual sign off. All right.